Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my reading wrap-up for January 2019. All right, so just as a heads up, if you hear any tapping in the background, it's my dog. She's just walking around. She gets a little bit antsy that I'm not paying attention to her and that I'm looking at the camera. And then also the hair is being air dried, so you know, me low-key with the styling. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump into what I read for this month. All right, so for the month of January, I read 3 books all the way through, and then I have 2 more books that I want to share with you as well. So the first book that I read is this one. This is The Terrible and Wonderful Reasons Why I Run Long Distances. It's by Matthew Inman, who is the creator of the webcomic The Oatmeal. And I read this because I had heard about the Blurch race that I think is in Oregon. I follow a few people who have YouTube videos about running, and so one of the ladies that I follow had talked about running in the Blurch, and I was like, what is this Blurch race? Because it sounds amazing and crazy all at the same time. And basically the Blurch is this character. And I think I showed you in my TBR if you saw that video. Nope, not that page. Where is he? He's like right at the very beginning. Here he is. So that is the Blurch. And basically what you learn is that the Blurch is this imaginary or kind of creature, or basically he's the conscious or the little voice inside you that says, you don't have to run today. You've worked very hard and you deserve a piece of cake. So Matthew Inman kind of talks about his struggle to beat the Blurch and basically keep running and to run faster than the Blurch can catch him. So I thought that was kind of an interesting and creative way of personifying like all of your like fears and lack of motivation and complacency and all of that stuff. I really like this. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I thought that this was a really easy read. It took me about 2 evenings to get through, and that's because I was reading it right before I went to sleep. But it's, you know, it's just a comic. If you like the oatmeal style comics and drawings, then I think that you'll like this as well. Even if you are not a runner or not a long distance runner, I think that there are definitely still things that are relatable, like that idea of wanting to get healthy or wanting to exercise or even just do things, but then you have that little voice behind you going, have cake, relax. So like I said, really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a great book to kind of start off my reading for the month of January. The next book that I read is this one. It is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and it's by Stuart Turton. This is a book that fulfills the Pop Sugar Ultimate Reading Challenge prompt of read a book that involves a maze or puzzle. And I originally picked up this book because I'm in the Pop Sugar Reading Challenge Goodreads group, and they decided for the month of January to read the prompt about the maze or puzzle, and then this was the book that they chose. So I picked this up from the library. It's now currently, people are waiting for it, but when I picked it up, I got it immediately. So I was so glad that I did. And I really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, but I think I'd like to read it again. And if I still like it when I read it again, then I think I might actually up it to 5 stars. I'm not gonna read it right now because like I said, people are waiting for it at the library. But it is something I definitely want to reread. So the idea behind the story is that you have this main character, Aiden, and he has 8 days to find out who killed Evelyn Hardcastle. The only thing is that there's a slight twist. At the end of the 8 days, if he doesn't find out, but the 2 other rivals that are also playing this game, if one of them does find out, basically the winner gets to leave the puzzle and the other 2 have to stay. So he's really kind of on the search to figure out who killed Evelyn Hardcastle. I thought this was a really unique take on the Groundhog's Day idea because even though the day repeats for 8 days, he is in different perspectives. He's like his mind is actually in different physical bodies. And so I thought that was a really great way to have the repeating day, but you're looking at it from different perspectives. And so as a reader, you don't get bored with seeing or reading the same things over and over again. So I thought that was a really good idea. Like I said, I would like to read it again to see if I can pick up on some of the clues that might have been dropped earlier and throughout the storyline without the now that I know the ending, to see if I can pick up those clues. So that's the next book that I read. The third book that I completely got through is this book. It is City of Ashen Red, and it's by Hye-young Pyun, and this is a Korean author, and it was translated by Sora Kim Russell. And basically this is a story about a man, and he has no name. He's addressed by the man throughout this book, and he lives in country A and he goes to country C. So kind of the main protagonist and like locations are really never mentioned. So he lives in country A and he gets promoted, and part of his promotion is to go for training in country C. He goes to country C, but he has really limited understanding of that country's language. And so while he's able to communicate with like basic ideas, and if others talk to him slowly, he really kind of struggles a little bit with the language, and people realize that. So that kind of isolates him from everybody else. You also kind of notice from his flashbacks and kind of as he's telling the story, or as we're learning more about him, you learn that he's also kind of socially isolated as well. He doesn't have very many friends or family. His coworkers he's kind of isolated from, and then he's really isolated physically once he goes to this country. There are some twists and turns which lead him on a different path from what he originally started, and he ends up abandoning like a lot of things. I liked this book. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, although on Goodreads, I'm kind of leaning more to like a 3.5 stars review, if you could give half stars. I thought that the character was someone that you start out really wanting, I think, to feel bad for, and especially as someone who I've lived in another country that did not speak English, and I don't know any other languages, and I did attempt to learn that country's language, but it was quite difficult. And as someone who also teaches English language learners, and I see their struggles with trying to learn the language and wanting to learn the language and communicate with people but still struggling, I did kind of feel a little bit for this guy, because there were points in time where people were like, well, you don't know, or, you know, where he just kind of gives up because they're speaking too fast and he doesn't want to feel embarrassed about his lack of understanding, which I totally get. So I felt a little bit for this character, but then as you progress and you kind of see what happens to him and the choices he makes, you realize like, I don't really know if I feel bad for him anymore. So anyway, I like the book. I'm definitely interested in reading the other story that she wrote, which is called The Hole. So I am interested in reading another one of this author's books. But like I said, it was a good book. I probably wouldn't read it again, and that's why I give it a 3 out of 5 stars. So sorry about the lighting. I know when I hold the book up, it kind of puts a slight shadow on my face. So I do apologize about that. My lighting is just, I'm working with natural lighting and limited like lamp lighting. So you know, I'll take what I can get. Anyway, here is the book that, the next book that I'm going to talk about. So this is a book that I started in January. I read throughout most of January, but didn't actually finish until this morning, which is February 2nd. But I'm including it in the January reading wrap up because it is a library book and it has to go back. I have no more renewals on it, and I did want to talk about it. This is the book Miss Subways, and it's by David Duchovny. And this follows the main character Emer, and she has a boyfriend named Con, which is short for Constantine, and it follows the myth of Emer and an Irish name that I cannot pronounce. Anyway, it follows that myth or that kind of storyline. However, it also uses that line and puts it into modern day. So this woman Emer, she's in her late 30s. She's a school teacher, like a first grade school teacher, and she lives in New York City. And like I said, she's in a long-term monogamous relationship with this man named Constantine, or Con, and basically gods get involved in their relationship, and she has to make a decision on whether Con dies or he lives. But if he lives, then basically their relationship has to be wiped out, and it's like they've never known each other. So obviously she chooses the latter because she loves him. And so kind of the story starts again, where you see her going through her life, and she's having these flashbacks and these dreams of this previous like life with this man named Con, but she doesn't know who he is. And it's interesting because they do eventually come together again, and then things happen. And I thought it was an interesting look at that myth of like they can't stay away from each other, like fate, like even like fate brings them together, even though there's like obstacles and gods that get in the way that try to like keep them apart. And I did like the ending as well. I did think it was a little bit slow in the beginning, but about halfway through is when it started to pick up. And unfortunately, I didn't get halfway through until about the end of January, which is why I didn't finish it until this morning. So while I liked it, it was not one of my like top books. So I think I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, but in reality, I would probably put this at, again, a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I am interested in reading more of David Duchovny's works. I think he's written 1 or 2 other books because I would like to kind of read a little bit more and just find out if I do actually like his writing style or not. There were times where I really did like what I was reading, like prose wise, and then there were times where I was kind of like, that's an interesting way of explaining things that I wouldn't, or like of explaining this woman's ideas and thoughts that I wouldn't necessarily know if I would have put those words together. So I don't quite know if I like his writing style 100%, but I would like to read more to kind of fully come to that decision. So I like this book, but 3 out of 5 stars. So the last book that I want to share with you is this book. It is The Magpie Tree by Catherine Stansfield. And when I talked about this in my TBR, I said that I had literally just picked it up because it was the first book I saw and checked it out because I was showing some students how to check out books from the library using the self-checkout station. But I went ahead and kept it because I was intrigued by the inside blurb and then also the cover. So I started reading it and I got about 50 to I think like 58 pages in, as I do when I decide if I want to put it down or not. And I was a little bit bored by it because by page 58, the 2 women main characters that are going to be solving this mystery of this boy who's disappeared, they've just gotten to the town and kind of settled into the place where they're going to be staying. And they're just starting to talk to the people in that town about the missing boy. That's it. Nothing else has really happened other than there's some sort of like tension between the 2 women. I don't quite know because as I was reading it, I was like, there's a lot of background information about these 2 women that we know that there's some sort of history, but I don't know what it is. And so I started doing a little bit of digging around. And when I tend to get a little bit bored or I'm a little bit unsure if I like an author or a story, I tend to kind of skim reviews on Goodreads. And so what I found was that this is actually book 2 in a series called The Cornish Mysteries. And I didn't realize that because it doesn't say it anywhere. There's nothing about the Cornish Mysteries. Like even when you look at here on the blurb, it doesn't say anything. Here, it doesn't say anything. It does mention her, like there's another book, it says by Catherine Stansfield, Falling Creatures, which ends up being the first book. However, it doesn't mention that it's part of a series or anything. And so when I was reading this, I was like, there's gaps in our understanding about these 2 characters' back history. And then I realized after kind of looking through the Goodreads reviews that the reason why there are those gaps is because if you had read the first book in the Cornish Mysteries, which is called, Falling Creatures, then we would have found out how these characters met and why there's this tension and so on. So I decided for now that I'm going to DNF this book because of 2 reasons. One, it's a little bit slow right now and I'm not so interested in continuing it just yet. There are lots of other books that I would rather read and that I need to read because they're checked out from the library and that I would want to read instead of this. And then also I'd like to check out the first book, read the first book first, and then if I like the writing style and I like the characters or the storyline, then I'll continue with the second book. I don't really like reading books out of order, although I think I could have with this one because while there's those gaps in understanding, I don't think as of right now it really affected too much of the storyline, but I would prefer to read things in order. So this is going to be a DNF for now. If you've read this book or this series and you liked it, let me know if it's something that I should continue or if it's something I should kind of indefinitely shelve and get around to when there's like no more books that I need to, that are on my TBR list, which would be never. But anyway, I'd be curious if you've read this or read the first one and what your thoughts were. So that's what I read for this month. It's not a whole lot of books compared to previous months that I've had, and my TBR list is always enormous. But I think it's still a pretty good start to the new year. I have 4 books under my belt, and I am in the middle of a couple more, which I will share in my February TBR list. But I'm curious to know what you've read for the month of January, and if you've read any of the books that I read, did you like them? Did you not like them? What were your thoughts on them? So leave those comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions, you can also leave those down below as well. Please like, subscribe if you're interested in more reading related videos from me or more planner related videos, mostly Hobonichi related videos. I will talk to you in the comments and see you in the next video. Bye.